I think that the We Bare Bears movie is a fitting finale for this series. It's short and sweet, encapsulating the essence of the show really well, all while effectively raising the stakes. It's a fun emotional ride, and I want to talk about how it tackles the concept of adaptation on 3 different levels, one for each level of the iconic bear stack. So let's break down all 3. Number 1. The movie adapts real-life issues via its allegory. This film goes to places you might not expect, but if you paid close attention to the show, it feels earned, appropriate, and necessary. Series creator and film director Daniel Chong has talked about how the bears would often be treated poorly by some humans in the show, and he'd sometimes see questions and criticism directed towards him about whether or not this poor treatment was motivated. The bears are so cute, how could anyone deny them what they wanted? Even the young baby bears questioned their repeated misfortune at one point in the show.
Grizz, is it our future to be taken advantage of at every turn?
And Daniel Chong's response was that, as an Asian American, it had always been evident to him that sometimes individuals are treated unfairly for no other reason than looking different. And that the show, while following a broad thematic idea about the universal desire to fit in and belong, was also specifically an allegory for what it feels like to be a minority in America. The contemporary setting of We Bare Bears allowed for plenty of relatable comedic potential about, for example, creating content on the internet no one watches, like me, hi mom, but also it provided the necessary backdrop for touching on the modern minority experience, such as the importance of proper representation in media, as depicted in my personal favorite episode, Grizzly the Movie.
I want you to maim him! Maul him like a bear would!
Maul? But I don't do that stuff.
I mean like how a more typical bear would.
So how does the movie continue this allegory of the American minority experience? Well, let me sum up the plot real quick. The movie follows a group of characters, depicted quite clearly as different and uncommon in their community, who are disproportionately criminalized for accidental minor offenses and pursued by law enforcement, to the point that the characters decide their best course of action is to leave America entirely so that they could be potentially liked and respected in another country, as opposed to being caged and separated here. Yeah, no hyperbole here. That is on its face what the story's about. The story just happens to be told through the allegory of these cute cartoon bears who not nearly enough people seem to care about helping.
Ice bear ready for universal healthcare.
Like any good allegory, it's no accident that this movie is really relevant right now, and to simply call it timely would be to ignore the horrific systemic prejudice that has existed since long before now. Daniel Chong said that the film was being written back during the enactment of the federal family separation policy at the US-Mexico border, and the crew felt it was disingenuous not to acknowledge it, based on the core theme of the show. The whole conflict of the movie stems from a closed-minded nature preservationist perspective. Agent Trout, played fittingly by Mark Evan Jackson, drawing on his prior experience from playing a closed-minded, torture-loving demon, is just the right antagonist. One may wonder what exactly his motivation is. Why is he so committed to sending these bears back to where they came from? He presents his case to the masses about why the bears should be dealt with, and it all comes back to one reason. And it's not the people the bears accidentally ran into on the street or the power outage that they caused, none of those antics, no. It's Trout's belief in what he refers to as the natural order. The bears aren't deemed a threat because of anything they've done. The bears' very existence and inclusion in the community is deemed unnatural and a threat to human society, as Trout knows it.
As long as they're here, your entire way of life is at risk.
Trout believes that everything can only be one way, and the film proves his ideology thoroughly wrong, even during its lighter moments, which starts to bring me into the second layer of how this movie does adaptation. Number 2. How it adapts the various iconic elements of the show into a film format. The first of those elements being the animal viral video concept from the show, which is further explored in the movie as a way to subtly rebut Trout's ideals. In the show, the bears would make videos for the internet, and very much be inspired by the Nom Nom character, a koala beloved online for his cute appearance, despite it not being an accurate representation of his jerk self. The film incorporates that dynamic, while also introducing us to other animals who have been pigeonholed, pun intended, into their roles from memes. Humankind only sees them one way they appeared in the memes, and for so long the animals have gone along with it because it's carved them a space in a human society that would otherwise ignore or reject them.
Yeah, people think I'm mad all the time because I look angry, but this is just my face.
It's a cute, unique, and funny way for the narrative to drive home the idea of not seeing the world through the shallow lens of inaccurate stereotypes. It's kind of like how this movie portrays the much circulated image of the bear stack itself, probably the most recognizable image from this show in the pop culture landscape. There's a reason I'm hanging the whole structure of the video on that image, right? Even if you don't know the show, you're quite possibly familiar with this iconography. And just like those recognizable meme animals in the movie, the stack's given deeper resonance and meaning than you could ever glean from a surface-level viewing of how cute that intro is to the show. Oh, look at the bear, so adorable! In this film, it's presented as a recurring symbol of the bear's unlikely, yet unwavering union. It's what first brought Grizz, Panda, and Ice Bear together, as the method of rescue for their outrunning of the train when they met as kids, and also the method of rescue for all their new bear friends in the climax. But the stack is also a symbol of the very thing that makes these bears different and unnatural. Agent Trout hilariously views it as the sickest affront to the natural order possible.
And the sickest, most disturbing thing these bears do? They stack!
And though we, the audience, laugh at the ridiculous lengths Trout goes to for something that obviously doesn't deserve it, the movie does take a step further in examining his motivation in the end, in a very serious manner. It doesn't give Trout a tragic backstory or any attempt to justify his actions, no, because there's no justification for them. But when Grizz asks Trout at the end of the film, point blank, why he's doing this in spite of the bears never doing anything to him, Trout gives an answer that is deeply unsettling.
Humans have been nature's dominant predator since the beginning of time. And this is the closest I will ever get to hunting you.
He alludes to a form of antiquated subjugation, one that he longs for, but knows is no longer allowed in society. Yet he knows the law can allow him to act in a manner where he can draw upon his inherent hatred and not face consequences. Because this manner, imprisoning them, separating them, this is all allowed. It's terrifying and indicative of the power that many police officers depicted in the film relish in abusing.
Is that a new baton model? Yeah, pretty nice, huh? Can't wait to use it.
This falls right in line with adapting the show's depiction, in which, much like other various one-off human characters, police officers tend to be either antagonistic or unhelpful towards the bears.
Honestly, this isn't that important.
Oh!
In this movie, only Officer Murphy from the show, who even still spends most of the movie somewhat reluctantly and haplessly chasing the bears along with Trout, actually acts against Trout and helps the bears in the end. Me personally, I think this could have been a great spot for Chloe and the other recurring human characters who stand up for the bears earlier in the film to come pitch in and help with the rescue and have more of a role. But hey, that's just a side note. Chloe's my personal favorite character, but I recognize part of adapting a show into a movie is not compromising the focused story you're telling just to service everything great from the show. The recurring characters are presented as significant even with their limited screen time, and that goes a long way. And I can say an element this movie definitely does go all the way in adapting is the baby bear flashbacks. Throughout this film's storyline, they cleverly integrate the future spin-off stars, the baby bears, who have offered some of the most memorable and emotional parts of the show. The baby bears in the show always had their own episodes, isolated unto themselves. Here, though, they open the film, establishing the bears' first meeting escaping being hit by a train, until Grizz wakes up and it's shown to be a dream. This created some unique tension for me, making me wonder how it would be revisited later. Then midway through the film, we return to this sequence of the first meeting, though it becomes abstracted further through a nightmare. And this time, Grizz is no longer a kid. He's an adult, but his brothers are still kids, and they're still running from that train. And Agent Trout appears, becoming the train, a personification of a larger, looming, seemingly unstoppable force that's always been following them for as long as they've known each other. All this serves to show how adult Grizz is trying his best to protect his brothers from the harsh reality of the world, and allow them to remain ideal, hopeful, and young. And also, Trout's threat of sending the bears back to where they came from is made even more hard-hitting if you've seen the episodes of how Ice Bear and Panda in particular fled their original homes as children. This finally builds to the sequence in which Grizz has one last dream. A conversation with his younger self. Which feels rather momentous, both for the film story itself and as a payoff of the series, finally bringing together these two narrative threads that were always presented separately. What happens when the guy who's been keeping everyone together and keeping life happy loses hope? He needs to learn it again from his younger self. And the phrase bros for life becomes quite genuinely touching here. Found family was always presented as a wholesome truth by Grizz, that these characters have just accepted from the beginning without question, finding companionship while not letting difference get in the way.
We don't even look alike.
I know! That's like the best part!
And Grizz keeps rethinking the harsh realities of their situations so that they can have fun and enjoy life together.
Don't think of this as us being on the run. Think of it more like a road trip.
That is, until the movie addresses the elephant in the room, that I didn't really think the series ever would. And I'm not talking about the one from the internet who paints. No, I'm talking about this.
We can't leave. We're brothers.
No! We're not brothers, Grizz. We're just a bunch of dumb bears who made up some story to make ourselves feel better.
The Bears Found Family, which had just been presented at face value up to that point, has its legitimacy called into question by the family itself. And I commend that they went that far. The show's definitely gotten dark before, but never has its core ethos of found family and inclusivity been so thoroughly and contentiously tested. This is what makes the story worthy of being the basis of the movie. It is the most elevated conflict you can present with heightened external and emotional stakes, all while remaining true to the allegory and the show. In the end, the mantra of bros for life is shown to not be a lie they told each other, but a promise they knowingly sought to uphold, an inclusive promise that extends to the many more bears that Trout had previously caged, that now find a new home in the Bay Area. And that's exactly how the film hits the third level of adaptation, completing the stack.
There you go.
Number 3 being that the film's a story literally about embracing the very act of adapting. Adapting through a found family isn't a lie, and becoming part of a community isn't a disingenuous disruption of the natural order that existed before. Conversely, adaptation is a fundamental truth of nature, because, as Grizz says,
Nature adapts. Maybe you should too.